bring it over to Samantha Dunn. She is an author in her own right of very many books. She is award-winning journalist, and we are lucky to have her at the Southern California News Group. She is a senior editor of engagement and premium content. And just good to see you again, Sam. Welcome.
Thanks, Julie. It's nice to have this Friday night date we have every
yes,
week.
It is.
And thanks to our valued subscribers who joined us for this salon-style conversation we have every week with writers and artists about books and ideas. And just so you know, there's going to be a diverse opinions and perspectives, so enjoy that. I want to tell you we value your support as subscribers and readers, and we couldn't bring you events unless you were around, so thank you. Today, as Julie said, we're talking about just kidding around. In other words, we're celebrating the YA audience. And as always, we are lucky to have our hostess, who's my friend, the performer, NPR commentator, contributor to The Atlantic, and author most recently of Madwoman and the Roomba, Sandra Singlo.
Hello, Samantha. Happy Friday. Good to see you.
Good to see you, as always. So we're talking children's books. What were your favorite children's books, Frank?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I grew up in Malibu in the 60s. The bookmobile would come to Malibu West, and of course it was Nancy Drew. Everything Nancy Drew, and it's kind of like, and as we say, I didn't know what diversity meant then. I thought that George was a tomboy, and then it was a very diverse. so it was eye-popping. How about you?
I didn't know that they had a bookmobile in Malibu. I lived on the bookmobile in rural New Mexico, and for me, it had to have 4 legs, or I didn't want to read about it. It was Steve Shinkaty, it was Black Beauty, it was the Black Stallion, you name it. That was my thing.
Very advanced, very advanced. I'm impressed.
Indeed. And it hasn't changed much. You can see the horses in the background.
And of course, we have children, of which we will be speaking a little bit more during this show.
And did you notice, this happened to me, we do this every Friday. My kids have no interest whatsoever in my work. My son, age 11, and my stepdaughter, age 14, could care less. But tonight, they're like, when does it start? When does it start?
Yeah, we have some people, some shorter people that have been counting the minutes to this. So it's going to be pretty exciting. We're going to have a couple of surprises along the way.
Indeed.
So if you thought you knew young adult fiction or young adult material, you don't know, parents or people over the age of, well, some age. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It will be great. And it's really an eye-opener about how diverse and amazing this genre, this part of literature is today. But anyway, I'll let you get to it.
All right, and with the Great British Baking Show, I say bye-bye, go to your tent, and we'll see you at the very end. And bring up our first guest, Lilian Rivera. I get to say Rivera. I guess I was told that I could say. The 30-second download. Lilliam Rivera has been lauded by outlets ranging from the New York Times, Washington Post, NPR, to Teen Vogue, and won a 2016 Pushcart Prize, among many other awards. Her young adult novels include Dealing in Dreams, where, in a reversal of power dynamics, the dystopian mega city is protected by all-female gangs. Take that, Nancy Drew. In The Education of Margot Sanchez, the title character's big dreams of fitting in at the new pricey white prep school her family is sacrificed for are derailed in summer, and we can all relate about dreams derailed in summer, where instead of going to the Hamptons, Margot's stuck working at her family's market in the Bronx. Lilliam's penning the Goldie Vance novel series, which we'll talk about, and her newest book, Never Look Back, comes out in September 2020. Welcome, Lillian.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so good to see you. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like growing up. Were you a writer to begin with? What inspired you? What was the beginning of your journey?
Yeah, I love that you were talking earlier just about Nancy Drew. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about Nancy Drew and The Outsiders, and these are all these books that I really loved. I also loved Ray Bradbury and The Martian Chronicles and all those kind of like different types. And I grew up in the South Bronx in New York. And so I really was a very shy, quiet person, but in a very big, loud Puerto Rican family. And all I did was read books. I got lost in my books. I wrote, but I was very shy, so I didn't share it with anyone. And it took me many years before I decided that I could venture into writing fiction. It took me a while for me to say, okay, maybe I can do it. I was just a little too shy to even do it.
About how old were you when you first stepped in?
Well, it was in high school because an English teacher, I wrote a short story and he didn't believe that I even wrote it because I was that shy. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to put you in the newspaper. So I ended up in the high school newspaper, and that was really the beginning of my journey, was through journalism. So I was a entertainment and fashion writer and editor for a long time before I decided, okay, maybe I'll try my luck writing fiction.
Well, you write such amazing characters and teen girls. I mean, it's just kind of the first page of your books, like the character just immediately, it's a gang girl. It's like, Margot. What do you think for you makes teen girls such great protagonists or such interesting characters in what you write?
Oh, the one thing that I love about writing young adult or middle grade books is that I feel during that time, especially during high school, is when you're really discovering your discovery of first, like the first time that you fall in love, or the first time that you realize your parents are not who they say they are, or the first time you're full of shame, all these like first. And I love it. I mean, it's full of high extreme drama. And I kind of like it never failed. Every time I would write any kind of fiction, I would always end up with a 16-year-old girl who happens to be Latina, and so I love kind of writing those stories. It just brings me right back to this new adventure, or the scary of it, it being scary, but also it being thrilling,
And I mean, you've talked a little bit about how, and I'm fascinated because I of course grew up as a girl, and of the of masks girls wear. What do you mean by that? Can you explain?
Sure. I wish if I was in my living room, you would see all the masks that I've accumulated from Puerto Rico, paper mache masks, coconut masks. I'm obsessed with this idea of the many different types of masks that young people wear, and older people too, we still do. And we all know when you're in the cafeteria, who are we dealing with? Which group of kids are you going to you're going to perform for in a weird way. And so then, for me, I was a shy kid, but I also was friends with all types of friends. So I would hang out with the ones who were really going out and hanging out in the street, or I was also hanging out with the nerds who are really into studying, or I was hanging out with other people who are into music. So it was just how I talk to different types of people. And that's really the way I view these kids, as they talk to their parents a certain way, they talk to their friends, and all the things that they say and don't say, and everything living in their head, so really that's, to me, I'm always going right back to this idea about masks.
And so for those who don't know the Goldie Vance series, can you introduce them to what it is?
Yeah, I love Goldie Vance. So Goldie Vance is actually based off of a comic book series that was created by Hope Larson and Brittany Williams in 2016. And it was really super popular. So Goldie Vance, she lives in the Cross Palms Hotel Resort in St. Pascal, Florida, which is a made-up town. And all she wants to do is she wants to be a detective. So she's forced herself in as to becoming the assistant to the house detective, to the hotel detective. And so she's all about creating, solving mysteries, and she will do whatever she has to do to solve these mysteries. She doesn't take no for an answer. And it's set in the late 1950s, early 1960s. So you get all that too. So you get, doo-wops and doo-wop music and the drag racing and all these kind of great little things that kids could fall in love. But I love her because A, she is biracial, and B, she's also gay, and it doesn't matter. Like, no one's thought, her family loves her. They just want her to solve the mystery, and her friends want her to solve the mystery too. So it's really a really fun kind of adventure. And it's been really great to write that kind of story as well.
And we welcome your questions, audience, as we go. Danielle Sutton has just noted just in passing that how cool it is that you managed to start in journalism before becoming an author. I've never been interested in journalism, but hearing your past actually interests me and makes me like it more. I think that's that people don't know how people start, and she was really happy to know that. So your new book, Never Look Back, coming out in September. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Never Look Back is a retelling of my favorite Greek myth, Orpheus and Eurydice. And it's set in the Bronx, New York, and you have Yuri, who's a displaced Puerto Rican, displaced by Hurricane Maria, and she's also being tormented by angry spirits, and she meets and falls in love with Orpheus, or Fierce, who's a wannabe bachata singer who's great at, singing this kind of Dominican, really rural, kind of loving music, seductive music, but he's going to realize that he needs more than just his beautiful lyrics to help save her. So they meet and they have to journey, and if you ever followed that myth, Orpheus and Eurydice, or if you ever fell in love with the Broadway show Hadestown, then you're going to love this kind of new interpretation of that myth.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds amazing. Coming out in September. Another quick note, I think that it was not Danielle Sutton, it was perhaps the son Wyatt who typed, and that Danielle is the mother. And the reason I'm saying that is because you're going to see some parent-child interaction in the show. No apologies for the Q&A. It's going to get messier. So hi, Wyatt. Great question. And I was fascinated to know that you decided to throw your book launch party for the education of Margot Sanchez in the Bronx, which was a unique choice, let's say. Can you explain why?
Yeah, because when I was growing up, there were no bookstores in the Bronx, New York. So if we wanted to buy a book, we would have to travel into the city, and that was a big thing. That was like a big deal for my family and for most families to do. And now, finally, the borough has its very own bookstore. It's called the Lit Bar, and Noelle Santos is the owner. And even before she even physically opened her location, I asked her, can you sell my books? We're gonna find a place, can you be the seller? And it was her first event ever under the Lit Bar, and now she actually has a place. It's beautiful. I had my second launch there last year. Because of the pandemic, I can't have my launch there now, but we're gonna figure something out because I have to support this bookstore. And if you buy online, you could support her through Bookshop, and it's super important for this bookstore to just stay in the Bronx because we severely need it.
So, and we'll have that link put up. A quick question. Andrea Germa asks, what are 5 must-read books for preteens?
Ooh, I'm going to say, and I'll go back and I'll say this again. It's like, for me, it was The Outsiders, because I love this idea of the family, the formed family. These are the kids that you're going to these are the people that you choose, your chosen family. And then I also love Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, because I honestly believe that the monster was the first teenager, and all he wanted was the affection of his father. And he will do whatever he can. So those are 2 of my favorites. But if you can for now, I would say these are authors that you could read, start reading their work, because I think they're important to me, is Meg Medina, who's written picture books and middle grade books and young adults. Matt de la Peña is another author who's also done that as well. And those are 2 of my mentors and my favorite authors who I always go to whenever I need a boost of inspiration.
I just to finish, because I know you teach young adult writing, and we do have an attendee who says, I wrote 2 novels, want to write a YA, and this is a great question. Any ideas on how to adjust one's writing for YA? Are there common mistakes people make? What's a great piece of advice that you could give people?
I think obviously, because we're adults and we're sort of looking back, you have to think about it that you're looking back, you're writing your characters do not have an adult wisdom. They don't. So you're not looking back and saying, and now I understand why I am treating my best friend that way. You don't know. You are in the moment, and that moment is everything is extreme and everything is emotional. And so, that's very, obviously, it's way more complex, your characters, but I really that's the one takeaway is you're not writing these characters with an adult wisdom.
That is amazing. And thank you so much. And Frankenstein, the first teenager, what's better than that? So thank you, Lillian Rivera. Thank you so much. Your new book is Never Look Back. It's coming out in September 2020 on Bloomsbury. And also will be the next Goldie Vance book coming out in 2021.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, next up we have Dan Povenmeier. But before we do the 30-second download, I am introducing a special guest teen host, which is, so that I was sincere about the parent-kid interaction. Kids, do not be shy about writing us your questions in that Q&A. And so it is my daughter, Maddie Miller. Unmuting, and there you are. Hello.
Hey, Mom. What's up?
An art major at UC Santa Barbara and has been in drama also. So I'm going to give it to Maddie Miller to run to run this section with Dan Povenmire while her mother watches anxiously on from her box.
Awesome.
Take it away, Maddie Miller.
All right. So we got our little flash synopsis for Dan Povenmire. Daniel Povenmire is a director, writer, producer, storyboard artist, actor, and musician. He's one of the creators of super popular and groundbreaking Disney series Phineas and Ferb, for which he is one of the main songwriters and also performs the voice of Heinz Doofenshmirtz. Povenmire was previously also known for his work on Rocko's Modern Life, Family Guy, The Simpsons, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at the tender age of 21. In October 2016, Disney XD debuted his series Milo Murphy's Law, title character voiced by Weird Al Yankovic. The long-awaited sacred event, Phineas and Ferb the Movie, Candace Against the Universe, debuts on Disney Plus on August 28th. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Maddie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing swell.
That's great. It's good to see you.
As you can tell, I'm on this lovely beach.
Which just default beach?
Yeah, just happens to be on a loop. So don't watch it for too long. It's
I love when I find places.
3 waves over and over again.
Just all the wind loops around in a circle around me. Yes. Absolutely. I was wondering if we could get started by maybe if you could tell us a little bit about what you were like when you were a kid. What were you up to? Did you always dream of being an animator? Anything like that?
You know, when I was a kid, I drew since I was a very, very, since I was like 2 or something like that. And I drew professionally since I was like 12, but I really wanted to be a writer. I was, my teacher in the 2nd grade read this story to us called The Return of the 12s about these toy soldiers that come to life at night. And I wrote a sequel to it, like a 26-page sequel to it that she read to the class at the end of that semester. And that's what I always wanted to do. And I sort of got sidetracked at some point just by cartooning. And now I get to do I get to draw and write music, and I get to sort of do a little bit of everything. That's all I ever wanted to do for a living, was something creative from when I was very, very young.
That's great. That's really kind of the best of both worlds, to start off in such a place where you're touching both those things.
Yeah.
Well, where did you go from there? So you had this really strong creative drive. You always wanted to do maybe something like that?
Yeah, well, I used the money I was making doing art to buy a Super 8 camera and projector, and I started making movies. And that really became my passion, was just like making little films, sometimes animated, sometimes live action. Then I went to USC and tried to get into film school, but just took nothing but film classes and then dropped out. So I'm a cautionary tale. Kids, stay in school, and then just sort of started working out of school and ended up in this. Coming from a different place, coming from Alabama. If you grow up in LA, you probably have lots of your parents' friends who do creative stuff for a living. You've seen that. I had no role models like that growing up in Mobile, Alabama. I was telling your mom the other day about the first person that I met who was doing something creative for a living. When I was 16, me and some friends went to this science fiction convention in Biloxi, Mississippi. That was like, an hour drive away. And it was our first like outing without chaperones and stuff. And we met this young writer, this young hippie guy in his, like maybe early 30s, who read one of his stories. And I have this very vivid image of him in my mind of reading this story, because the first time I saw somebody who was actually doing something like that, reading their own stuff. And I've always remembered him, and we had dinner with him afterward and hung out with him, and he had been able to quit his job because his first novel had done really well, and he'd been able to quit his job and just write for a living. And he was the first person I remember meeting who was doing something creative as a career. And then I, of course, forgot his name and was never able to look him up or anything, but I think about him all the time. Then like 2 years ago, I'm visiting a friend of mine up in Oregon who was there on that trip, and he had written down the guy's name. The guy's name was
him. Perfect.
The guy's name was George R.R. Martin, the creator of Game of Thrones.
That's great.
And as soon as he said that, I went, that can't be right. They're like, George R.R. Martin, 1979. And here came this picture of this guy that we hung out with, and I was like, I cannot believe that I have not known this all these years.
Just some hippie guy you met. That's so crazy.
And he's done all right, apparently. So, but that was my guy. That was the guy. That was the reason that I believed it was possible to do this is because you got to sort of see somebody else do it.
Yeah,
that feels real to you.
An out of reach thing. I can imagine not,
Yeah.
I mean, growing up in LA, my parents, both creatives, always so influenced. So to not really, I don't know, to meet somebody that can do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely something like so, inspiring.
It was very, and I had just started watching Game of Thrones when I found that out. Like 2 weeks earlier, I had gone through like 5 seasons of Game of Thrones. And I was like, no, that's not. Oh my gosh! So it was really great. But so hopefully that's why whenever I talk to young kids and stuff, if they're interested in doing something creative, I always try to take a little extra time with them and sort of show them that's something you can actually do. Because also growing up in Alabama, you get this, well, there's a reason they call them starving artists. It's because they're starving. You'd hear that over and over again, and people just couldn't believe that you could do something like that and actually make a decent living.
Yeah,
and
not just a hobby or something.
Yeah, exactly. I've done really well, but you don't have to sell your own show and have a big hit show to do well in the creative field. If you live out here, there's so many other jobs on every show, and these people are all paying their rent. And if you can do something that you love for a living, then whatever you make is going to be enough anyway. If you're doing something you hate, it doesn't matter how much you're making, it's never going to be enough.
Satisfied with.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, following up on getting a whole show together, so I'm sure our many participants are eagerly, Phineas and Ferbing in the background. How did Phineas and Ferb come about? Was it an overnight success? Do you want to give us a little rundown about that?
It was sort of an overnight success once it got on the air, but it took us 13 years of trying to sell it to get it on the air, and then another two or 3 years of making the first season before it got on the air. So it's like we created it. I created it with my friend Swampy Marsh. When we were working on a show called Rocko's Modern Life, and we thought, okay, hey, we really like writing together. We should create a show together, and then we'll never have to work apart. And then we never worked together for 13 years. And I was always trying to sell this show that we had created. And I always got really good response, but it would get up the echelons of people who make decisions. And then somebody would say no. And then it was very heartbreaking. And then, a couple years later, somebody would say, hey, do you have anything you want to pitch? And I would bring that in. I would dust it off and I would pitch it again. And then it would get up at that studio. And Disney was just the first place that actually let it go all the way to a pilot. And then it tested through the roof. It was one of the best testing pilots they've ever done there. And and then they put it on the air and really got behind it. So it was a great thing.
That's awesome. And you're coming out with Phineas and Ferb, you know, Candace versus the universe.
The movie,
that's going to
yes.
be so crazy. How's it been finishing a feature film during a pandemic?
Well, yeah, that was the weird thing, was like in the middle, you know, we weren't quite through with animation, but we were most of the way through animation. And we did all the editing basically from our different houses. You know, Disney really did a scramble and figured out how to even do that. You know, what equipment do the editors need? So that, because we're using assets that exist at the studio. So they had to be able to connect with that and connect with us in a way that on my tablet computer at home, I could draw on the screen and they would be able to see what it is and send that to the animators wherever they are. And it was a crazy thing, but we were able to do it. And the good thing about being in animation right now is it's one of the only arms of the visual entertainment industry that can still be in full production, because, you know, we don't have to be in the same room with, you know, for that matter, I know a lot of animators that would much prefer to not be in the same room with other people. You know, there's a lot of very introverted people in animation who just sort of keep to themselves. So they're just, okay, this is perfect for me. I'm going to sit in my room and draw. So it works well.
That's so great. Well, that's crazy. I feel like with the whole shift into, you know, remoteness, if anybody's going to figure out how to do that, it's a company like Disney.
Yeah.
Sending out all the equipment and whatnot.
That's exactly what they did.
I think I might have I think I have two more questions. One of them, just give us evolution of how you got to your film, evolution of Candace against the universe, how you guys got
it. So you know, they were starting up this streaming service. They didn't even have the name Disney Plus yet. They were just saying, we're doing a streaming service and we want stuff that will be co-viewing material, stuff that kids and adults and teenagers can all watch together. And the thing that worked like that on Disney Channel was Phineas and Ferb. We had, you know, 40% of our audience was adults. And so they called up and said, hey, would you guys want to do more Phineas and Ferb, or are you just completely sick of it? And it was like, well, we were sort of sick of it 5 years ago when we stopped, but now we sort of miss them. So yes, let's do that. And then it was just a matter of being in a room with all the with a bunch of Phineas writers going, how about this story? How about this story? And us going, no, we did that second season. We did that third season. That was one of our specials. It was like we just kept on mixing everything because we had already done it. And we ended up telling a different kind of story with Phineas and Ferb, because usually it's what the boys are doing, what Doofenshmirtz is doing, what Candace is doing, and they all come together. This was sort of, let's make it more of a narrative that has some jeopardy in it, which we never really did jeopardy on Phineas and Ferb. And so we had Candace get kidnapped by aliens, and they have to figure out how to go and save her and bring her home. And it ends up being a much more emotional story than we usually got to tell with those characters. And, you know, some of the people who've seen it say, oh, I cried. And I was like, yes, got him. So I'm really happy with it. I think it's one of the best things we've done.
That's so great. Well, I'm looking forward to it so much. I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Pertains possibly to me, even. Crazy,
okay.
Right? All this, you know, intergenerational stuff we got going on.
Yes.
So this is a question for young artists, general term. Young artists, cartoonists.
Like somebody that we both know.
Yeah, like somebody, I don't know, somebody maybe sitting in an empty room with me. Advice to young artists who might feel a little stuck in the pandemic with, you know, maybe people are coming out of college or coming out of high school, trying to think about where, you know, obviously industries are going and whatnot. How do you not become stagnant and complacent as like an artist?
This is where you have to find out whether you have the initiative to do the stuff yourself, or if you need somebody to tell you what to do. I had a whole conversation with Vincent Martella, who played Phineas at the beginning of Corona, because he moved to New York with his friend Mikey, who played St. John and Victorious. It's two like young, very talented comedic actors living together in New York, and they'd moved there to get into sketch comedy there and do the comedy clubs and stuff like that. And he was complaining about the fact that, I had no place to do that. And I'm like, dude, I just joined TikTok and I'm blowing up because that's where all the Phineas and Ferb fans went. So you should join TikTok. You've got Instagram, you got Twitter, and you guys can do skits, just the two of you, because you write your own skits anyway. Just do it every day. Write something and put it up. Like once a week, put out a new thing. You've got iMovie on your computer. You can film it with your camera. The good thing about being an artist today is that you don't have to wait for other people to buy your stuff to get it out there. When I was making little movies with my Super 8 camera, there was no way I was going to get people, in other places to see it. And now you can just put stuff out, and people can find an audience for it just by putting it on social media and everything like that. Just create every day and make that your job, even when you're stuck inside. Work at it the way you would work at it if you had to go to McDonald's and sling fries for a living. If you spend that much time on something that you love, it should be easier than going and slinging fries. Just make sure that from this time to this time you're working and getting stuff out there, and people do it. I just saw this morning on TikTok a girl. I follow a lot of songwriters. And two of the songwriters that I've been following that were nobody 2 months ago have record deals. And one has the number 23 song on the iTunes pop charts right now. And, just because she released it and she had this audience that she had built on TikTok that all bought it. I bought it. And, and that's, like she didn't even have to go and get a record deal to do that. And the other guy got signed by Sony Music. You're living in a time where you don't have to have a studio behind you to get your stuff out and seen, which is a great thing.
Well, you guys, I popped on. I'm proud as mother to the daughter. I'm proud that you did a good job.
She did.
No obscenities were dropped. That was very good.
Not by her, at least.
There are questions flowing, but we have to go to our next episode because the time flies so short. But the one that I will ask you in passing is Dominic Oivadotti says, "Can you please say something in the Doofin shirt?"
Okay. For those of you who haven't seen the show, it's a character I play on the show. So he's an evil scientist, and he's always trying to take over the entire tri-state area.
Which you absolutely did. Okay, so thank you so much, Dan Povenmeier. Look for his new movie, Phineas and Ferb, the movie, Candace Against the Universe, coming out next month. Do it. And thank you, Maddie Miller, for your interview segment.
Hi, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you. And now to our final guest, Jeff Kinney. And I can just tell you there are some kids watching that have been counting the minutes to this very moment. But you will have to wait 30 more seconds while I do the download for anyone who is the last person in the world who's not aware of Jeff Kinney. Jeff Kinney is a creator of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, the first book of which appeared in 2007, a fixture on the New York Times bestseller list. Every subsequent book, I believe they're now 14, has exponentially increasing sales with now more than 200 million copies in print, available in 76 editions and in 64 languages. The online version of Diary of a Wimpy Kid has more than 80 million visits to date and is read by more than 70,000 kids a day. It spawned 4 hit movies. Also the creator of Pop Tropica, Jeff has been named one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, how are you doing?
It's so good to see you. And before I ask you the first question, I have to say here, I have this. And
oh, wow, that's cool.
It is my daughter, and you signed it to Maddie, who was here. And of course, you can see, and she has filled everything out. And it's kind of like, and what's the name of your favorite movie? Diary of a Wimpy Kid, 4 adjectives, funny, cool, exciting, and the best. So it's amazing how personally your fans take you, but before we go to that, and they all have questions, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about growing up, how you grew up, what kind of kid were you, and what you thought
Yeah.
when you grew up.
Before I answer that question, just a shout out to Dan, if he was still tuned in. I am a huge fan of Phineas and Ferb, and I think Little Brother is just maybe the best song I've ever heard. So, okay. Is he still there? Maybe. That's cool. So what was it like for me growing up? It was an ordinary childhood. I think that's sort of the magic of my books, is that there was nothing extraordinary. I was not the son of a wizard or the child of a god or something like that. I was a lot like one of the kids in Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing, Peter Hatcher, who was kind of like a bit of a sad sack kid. I felt a little bit like an invisible kid, but my childhood was kind of very, very ordinary. And so now I'm taking all those ordinary stories and putting them into these books.
Yeah, and I think that you began, I think that it wasn't book writing that you were beginning with, to begin with, you wanted to do something else.
Yes, you're reminding me of my failures. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, we're trying to model, change and transformation for everyone watching. So
I wanted so badly to be a newspaper cartoonist. I was a fan of Charles Schulz, who did Peanuts, and Bill Watterson, who did Calvin and Hobbes, Gary Larson, who did The Far Side. Those were my favorites, and I think we probably grew up at a time when we had really the very best, funniest comics. And so I could see myself there. I wanted to be at the top of the comics page with my heroes. And in college, I thought I was a pretty good writer, but I wasn't a good illustrator. And so I needed to figure out a way to make this work, because the syndicates didn't like my cartooning. They could see it wasn't professional. And I had to come up with a way to slip my cartoons into something. So I kind of created this type of genre, this hybrid text but comic based illustrations, which are a little bit different than regular illustrations. So the language of my books is really in comics.
Yeah, no, it's fan, and the huge success has proved that was the right way to go. I mean, what would you say keeps the series fresh for you? I think you had said at one point that you didn't think it would last beyond 3, and now you're 4 times as many. So what makes it fun for you to keep going?
There's always a challenge. Like for this book, the challenge was to write a book that I knew that was going to come out during COVID. So how do you write a book like that? How do you write a funny book like that? Do you address COVID head on? Do you ignore it? Do we live in a fictional universe that ignores it? And so it was a great challenge, because I figured out a way in this book to write about COVID without directly referencing it. So I think the first page of my book says, that the family's been stuck together. They're at each other's throats. And Mom says, we just need a vacation. And Greg says, I think we just need a vacation from each other. And I think anybody reading that will, they'll know what I'm talking about. But it turns out I'm writing about something totally different. They're stuck in grandma's basement because they're doing renovations on their house. But then there's this kind of fantasy where they get out into the world, they go camping, on an RV trip, which I think a lot of people are doing right now. So in that way, you asked how I keep it fresh. So that was a nice challenge to have. And sometimes challenges can keep things fresh.
But of course, your newest book, which is coming out on August 4th, right around the corner, Raoul E. Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure. Okay, so this is a book, is like, what's the inspiration behind this book?
This was a really fun book to write, because in the book, Rowley is writing a fantasy story, and Rowley's Greg's best friend. He's sort of this innocent kid, and he tells a story the way most kids go about it when they first tell a story. It comes from pure imagination. So he shares it with his friend Greg, who's a little bit more cynical and a little bit more grown up. And then Greg has thoughts, right? Because Rowley's book is sort of childish. I think the first line is, something about Roland. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Roland, and Roland was a very good boy. They'll never fly by Greg's standards. So Greg is actually giving criticism and commentary to Rowley, which Rowley then incorporates into his story. So the story keeps shifting based on the feedback that he's getting from Greg. And I think it might be my favorite book. So it's a pity that it's coming out during a really tough time for bookstores. and authors, but it's really cool that it's getting out there into the world.
And speaking of bookstores, you actually you started a bookstore with your
Yeah.
wife. And,
Yep.
what was the impetus behind that? And
Yeah, it's 5 years old now. It's called An Unlikely Story in my town of Plainville, Massachusetts. And it's, what was the impetus? It was, at first I just wanted to build a nice building because we have a town that's a little bit run down in the center. And I just wanted to put a nice building in the center so that we could have a little bit of pride in our, in our architecture, I guess you could say. And then I thought, what should we put here? What really serves the biggest swath of people? And I was like, wow, a bookstore really serves kids who are 2 years old and grown-ups who are 98 years old and everybody in between. And it's been amazing. We've had the best authors in the world at that bookstore. Keeps our lives very interesting and very fresh.
so now we pivot to the questions of some of the youth that have been helping us with questions. And on that, I'm going to bring back Maddie Miller, our teen investigator on the like, who has the questions, who is going to run with some of these questions. All right, good luck, my dear.
Thank you, Mom. Hi, Jeff Kinney. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, Maddie.
I'm
Nice to
gonna
have seen your.
Say one more time.
I saw a little bit of your do-it-yourself journal, I think, right?
Oh, that's great. That's great. All of my deepest thoughts and secrets are in there.
Right. As a fourth grade.
So I was hoping I could lead with a question of my own. Just gonna slip this one in here while I'm doing the labor for my mom, of course.
Okay.
So I remember growing up. So you're also the creator of Pop Tropica, which is
That's right.
so crazy to me because I remember when I was a kid, that was like the #1 game that me and all my friends would play. And even nowadays, when I talk to my friends and stuff about stuff we used to play and whatever, everybody knows Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Everybody knows Pop Tropica. That's like the first name to come up, And I just remember like Scholastic catalogs, seeing the new colored, covers and whatnot. I just remember being so drawn to your books and your stories. And I was wondering if you have any idea why kids, what about your stories kids are so drawn to, we identify with?
Boy, that's interesting because thank you, first of all. And it's good to meet people on the other side who grew up on this stuff. What Diary of a Wimpy Kid is really just an ordinary childhood. I'm trying to make it as basic as possible. In a way, like I want kids to see themselves in these books in a really generic way. They're the stories of childhood. They're about parents and teachers and bullies and pets and everybody in between. And Pop Tropica was really wild. It was this, we could tell any kind of story, fantasy, mythology, mystery. And what was really cool about that is that we knew that we had this privilege, which was to introduce kids to the world. Like, so kids playing a Pop Tropica Island might, for the first time ever, be learning about Greek mythology if they hadn't read Percy Jackson. But in noir and filmmaking and just about anything. So we knew at that time, and I think we must have had 500 million users at one time. We knew that we were reaching a lot of kids, and it's cool to hear that you value that and that your friends value that growing up, because we worked hard at it.
That's so great. Yeah, Pop Tropica is such a crazy thing to even think about, like as a part of a childhood. So I think we might have another child guest of Ben Camp, age 11.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey Ben, how are you?
Good. How are you? Before I say my question, I just want to say I'm a really big fan of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm working hard. I hope the next book works for you.
Yeah. So what inspired you to make it? Has there been like anything like in your childhood or anything that just inspired you to make it?
Yeah, everything. And they say that if you're a writer or a musician, an actor, you'll use everything from your life. And it's true. I think that what's really wild is that you're the owner of your own life story, right? So you sort of have the copyright to your own life. And the things that happen to you uniquely. And so just about everything in the books has happened to me at some point in my life. In this book that I'm writing right now is a camping story, but for example, they go whitewater rafting, or they actually go tubing. And this happened to me in real life, where my bathing suit was almost taken off and flowed downstream on me. And so now I'm making that happen to Greg. You know, it's just like something that happened to me as a grown-up. But a lot of the stories of Diary of a Wimpy Kid come from my real life stories. And if you can you tell me anything funny that you remember from the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books? Because I can tell you where it came from.
Let me think. When Greg was at the public pool and all the little kids started to pee everywhere.
Was that in the movie or in the?
I don't remember. I get confused with the movies and the books.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes I do too. Yeah, that's let's see. I am sure that's happened. I'm sure it's happened to you, where you swam in the little kids' pool and you're like, boy, this water is really warm. That's really odd, isn't it? And then, you know, it takes you a little while to realize what's actually going on in there. And that's why you move to the bigger kids' pool, you know? So yeah, definitely that kind of thing happened to me as a kid.
Very cool. Thank you, Ben Camp.
Yeah. Good question.
And so I'm also here as a young person to facilitate some more questions, 3 questions from Jack Chatow, who is 8 years old.
Great.
So these are from the transcription.
Okay.
He'd like to know, how many different languages are your books translated to, and what country likes them the most outside of the US? Who is ordering the most of your books?
Great question. I think that the books are translated to 64 languages, but I think we just added a few more. I think we added Swahili lately, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think we did. I'm getting confused myself now. And what country likes it the most? I think Germany took it up right away, and Israel, it does really well in Israel, Brazil. And in fact, a lot of the books in Brazil are delivered by Kinney. So
wow.
They print them really small, and then they go up the river. And I should know that, is it the Amazon River? I'm not sure what it is, but it's
a literary podcast.
It's the big one, right? And they deliver the books by Kinney. So it's pretty cool. I've gotten to visit a lot of the countries. I've gotten to visit probably about 28 different countries, and I've been all over the place. I've been to China a few times, and Turkey, Brazil, Australia a few times, and on. Places I never thought I'd go, and you know, these really ordinary books took me there. So it's a cool thing, and it's being a writer, it's a career I'd highly recommend.
That's great. That's so cool to hear about different ways these books are coming out to kids, especially because, I don't know, I remember it being such an iconic with the cover and whatever, to think of it being packed up all small in a canoe. So fun.
Yeah.
Our question number 2 is, will there ever be a book where Greg is in high school or college?
Yeah, there won't. The Greg is, one of the things that people like about cartoon characters is that they don't change, right? Is that they're reliable. So, you know, Bart Simpson might have a first day of 5th grade, 25 years in a row. But we like that. We don't want to see Bart, all grown up and in his second marriage or something like that. You know, we want our cartoon characters to stay the same. So I think if you think of a literary property like Harry Potter, and I love Harry Potter, but as soon as you start to age him, as soon as he goes from year 6 to year 7, you know that well, the story eventually has to end, right? Because we don't want to read about Harry when he's a man so much. We want to read about him as a boy. And so that's what I like about cartoon characters, is that I have permission to keep the cartoon characters the same age. That's
great. The last question does sort of pertain to transformational characters. Final question from the kids. Will Greg ever change his hairstyle?
Will he change his hairstyle? You know, that I don't think that he will. I think maybe I did something with that in the Do-It-Yourself book, but one of the things I really like about drawing the Diary of a Wimpy Kid characters is that in a way there's so few lines that you can't really tell, you're not thinking about ethnicity so much. You're just thinking about the character themselves. And I like it that they're very vague, because I like it that kids can kind of project themselves onto the characters. And so when I go to Turkey or China or Brazil, those kids really feel like Greg is them, or could be one of their friends. And that's very exciting to me, because I like that idea that we're all sharing universal childhood.
What a lovely answer. Well, thank you so much, Jeff Kinney. I think those are all my child questions. His newest novel, Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure, comes out on August 4th. So everybody go check it out.
Yes, and if we can hang on for 2 more, because there's so many questions coming in, we can't answer them all, but one from Angela Palace's 8-year-old son, Cal, wants to know if you know how many more Wimpy Kid books are going to come out.
I think I would like to get to 20, so that would be really cool. I'm working on one right now. You see it right behind me in the window here, and that'll be my 15th. So I'd like to get to 20, because that's a big number, but we'll see. We'll see how long I can go.
And one other just quick question: Faye Kane and Andrea Germa asked, what's either your favorite book or your favorite book when you were a preteen? One more.
My favorite book now, or a preteen. Okay, let's see. I would say anything by Judy Blume. I really liked Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing when I was growing up. I liked when I started to develop my own taste. I really liked fantasy, and I liked The Hobbit, and a series called the Xanth series, which is Xanth by Piers Anthony. So those, I really liked fantasy when I was about in 5th grade. So great questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, just the enthusiasm, and thanks to all the parents and the children who are all typing at the same time, and it's so much fun. So yes, Madeline, can you say again the new novel to look forward to on August 4th is?
August 4th is Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure, coming off August 4th. Please also support your local bookstores. Don't buy it on Amazon. Look at your bookstores and support, the places around you while we can.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And the one thing I'll say in passing is that in Access Books, where we first met you, the Wimpy Kid series is the most requested book series. So that's a tribute, and we're so grateful in Los Angeles that you joined us.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jeff Kinney, and thank you, Maddie Miller. Okay, and hello. Woo, what a whirlwind. We're back, Samantha Dunn. Really, like I said, I do want to put a plug in for Access Books, which is an LA-based organization run by Rebecca Constantino. Since 1999, they have given away 1.7 million books to over 300 and refurbished over 300 school libraries. And I really do feel we are in a pandemic, and though Dan Povenmeier said, everybody be creative at the same time, kids are going to go back to school next month in remote learning. And if there's anything we can do, it's the gift of books is the most COVID safe thing. So if people go to Access Books, they have a plan where they're trying to give 3 books to every child, and it's about $5,000 per school to do that, but starting somewhere. And you can also actually donate your new or very gently used books to get those beautiful books into the hands of kids. So important.
So important. Thank you. That is wonderful. And don't forget the Orange County Children's Book Festival. That starts September 14th, and it's all virtual this year. So no matter where you are, you can Zoom in, and that's something you can absolutely check out. Thank you for the slide there, Julie. Appreciate it. And thank you, Sandra, as always. And thank you to our amazing guests. And Maddie, thanks for your work on here too. We pay you as much as we pay your mom for this. And everyone, I encourage you to read our newspapers and visit our websites to stay informed, and perhaps most importantly, maybe to be entertained like you were tonight. If you'd like to share your thoughts from today, or you have additional questions, please email us at events@scng.com. Next week we have funny stuff with OC Register Frumpy Mom columnist Marla Jo Fisher, author and screenwriter Meryl Marco, and famed newspaper columnist and funny guy Dave Barry. So please come back. Thank you all, and see you next time. Bye.